No one expected silence to fall in that briefing room. Not from an admiral known for breaking men with a look. Not from officers who had survived 3 wars and buried half their units. And certainly not from a woman standing alone at the center of the room, boots dusty, uniform pressed, posture unshaken. The hook came without warning. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She simply reached for the hem of her combat shirt. And in that moment, the entire room stopped breathing. But before that, before the silence, before the scars, you need to understand how she got there. Lieutenant Mara Hale was not supposed to be in that room. She wasn't supposed to be alive. 6 months earlier, the forward operating base at Kandar Ridge had been listed as lost with all hands. Enemy artillery had reduced it to rubble in under 8 minutes. Satellite feeds showed firestorms where tents once stood. Command moved on. Casualty reports were written. Names were engraved. Mara Hale's name was one of them. But the dead don't walk into command briefings. Mara had survived by instinct and stubborn refusal to die. When the first shell hit, she was thrown against a concrete barrier, ribs shattering like dry wood. She remembered the sound more than the pain, a wet crack, followed by air leaving her lungs in a scream she never heard. She dragged herself into the trench system as the base collapsed. Men burned. Radios screamed. Orders dissolved into static. For 2 days she hid beneath collapsed earth, drinking condensation from her canteen cap, holding her side as every breath sliced like a blade. When extraction finally came, unofficial, undocumented, it wasn't command that pulled her out. It was her squad. What remained of it? She spent months in recovery, her chest wrapped tight, lungs relearning how to work. Doctors offered medical discharge. Command offered paperwork. Everyone offered her a way out. She refused all of it. Because the report said she froze. Because the report said she failed her post. Because the report said the base fell due to delayed response. And because someone needed a scapegoat. That someone was her. The Admiral, 4 stars, chest heavy with medals, had summoned her for a final evaluation. Officially, it was routine. Unofficially, everyone knew what it meant. Career end. Quiet dismissal. A woman erased without noise. The briefing room was full. Senior officers lined the walls. Analysts sat behind screens. The Admiral stood at the head, hands clasped behind his back, voice sharp as steel. Lieutenant Hale, he said, not looking at her. Your after-action report contradicts every other account. Mara stood straight. Yes, sir. He finally turned. You claim you held the Eastern Trench for 7 minutes alone. Satellite footage shows nothing. Yes, sir. You claim you relayed coordinates under fire. No transmission was received. Yes, sir. Murmurs spread like ripples. The Admiral's voice hardened. Do you expect this board to accept your word over recorded data? Mara swallowed once. Then she did something no one expected. She reached down. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, but from memory. And she lifted her shirt. Gasps echoed. Her torso was a map of violence. Thick scars curved along her ribs, jagged, uneven, unmistakably from shrapnel tearing through flesh. Surgical lines crossed emergency stitches. One rib pressed outward, never set correctly. The skin was tight, pale, stretched by healing that never fully finished. She didn't rush. She didn't explain. She let them look. The Admiral stepped forward without realizing he had moved. His mouth opened, then closed. Because scars don't lie. And in that silence, the truth finally had room to breathe. No one spoke. The hum of the overhead lights sounded louder than artillery ever had. Mara kept her shirt raised. Not in defiance, not in desperation, but in quiet certainty. These weren't wounds for sympathy. They were evidence. Permission to speak freely, sir, she said. The Admiral nodded slowly, eyes never leaving the scars. Denied, he said automatically. Then, after a pause. Granted. Mara lowered her shirt but remained exposed in a different way now. I held the Eastern Trench because everyone else was dead, she said evenly. I relayed coordinates on a destroyed handset because the primary relay was on fire. I didn't freeze. I stayed. An officer at the wall shifted uncomfortably. The Admiral turned to the analysts. Why was no transmission logged? A technician swallowed. Sir, the Eastern Relay Tower collapsed 4 minutes into the barrage. Mara exhaled. I kept transmitting anyway, she said. Because stopping meant giving up. A senior colonel cleared his throat. Lieutenant, why wasn't this disclosed in medical review? Mara's jaw tightened. Because I was told it wasn't relevant. Silence again, but different now. Heavier. The Admiral straightened. Who told you that? Mara named the officer. That officer was not in the room. The Admiral's voice dropped to something dangerous. Continue. Mara nodded. I crawled 300 meters with cracked ribs to reach the backup flare launcher. Fired it by hand because the mechanism jammed. That's when the second shell hit. She tapped the scar lightly. Collapsed lung. 3 fractured ribs. 1 puncture. I sealed it myself. Someone whispered. Impossible. Mara looked toward the sound. Unlikely, she corrected. Not impossible. The Admiral turned away, jaw clenched. He hadn't fallen silent because he was shocked. He had fallen silent because he knew. He knew the system had failed her. He knew command had buried the truth. And he knew those scars would follow him into every decision after. The meeting ended without dismissal. Instead, the Admiral said words no one expected. Lieutenant Hale, remain. When the room emptied, the silence felt intimate, almost uncomfortable. The Admiral removed his cover and set it on the table. I've seen wounds like that, he said quietly. On men who didn't make it home. Mara nodded. I almost didn't. Why fight this? He asked. You could have taken discharge. Honors. Peace. Mara met his eyes. Because the report was wrong. And wrong reports get people killed. The Admiral studied her. Do you know what your scars represent? He asked. Yes, sir. They represent command failure, he said. And in that moment, Mara realized something had shifted. Not just for her, but for everyone who would come after. The investigation moved fast. Too fast. Reports were reopened. Officers reassigned. Evidence pulled from archived feeds no one had reviewed closely enough. Mara was called to testify. Not once, but repeatedly. Each time, she told the same story. And each time, it held. The truth has weight. And scars give it gravity. One night, the Admiral stood alone outside the medical wing as Mara finished another exam. They'll fight this, he said. You know that. She nodded. I know. Are you ready for what comes next? She looked at her hands, the same hands that had sealed her own lung under fire. I already lived through the worst part, sir. The Admiral exhaled slowly. So did I, he said. Months later, the citation was read aloud. Not quietly, not privately, but in formation. Lieutenant Mara Hale stood at attention as the medal was placed over her neck. The Admiral's hands trembled slightly, not from age, but from the weight of it. For extraordinary valor, he read, voice steady. In defiance of overwhelming fire. In defense of those who could no longer defend themselves. When he finished, he leaned closer. You were right, he said softly. Scars don't lie. Mara saluted. And this time, the silence that followed wasn't disbelief. It was respect.